Imagine this. You wake up early, exactly when your carefully structured morning routine tells you to. The room is quiet, neat, curated. The walls hold the color of calm, the scent of minimalism, the weight of control. The bed is made with the precision of someone who never lets things slip. You stretch, sip water, take a deep breath. The mirror reflects back an image the world might envy. Sharp, poised, disciplined, successful. Your closet, a monochrome gallery of ambition. Your kitchen, stocked with the right balance of nutrition and intent. The coffee drips, just enough, never too much. Your calendar waits, full, structured, bullet-pointed into submission. You are doing everything right, and yet, there it is, that whisper. Small, almost imperceptible at first, but it grows louder the quieter the world becomes. Is this it? It doesn't make sense. You've made it. Or at least that's what they say. You have the markers, the income, the recognition, the status, the control. You've ticked the boxes your younger self once idolized. The applause of the world is real. So why does it feel so silent inside? This is the paradox no one talks about. Success was supposed to bring peace, joy, arrival. Instead, it brought a void, a strange, echoing weight beneath all the light. The more you achieve, the less it seems to satisfy. You scroll through your feed, smiles, beaches, awards. Every image screams happy. Every caption whispers blessed. But deep down, a darker suspicion brews. Are they pretending too? You start to notice the patterns, the stories of those who had it all and fell apart, the public breakdowns, the secret addictions, the confessions tucked between TED Talks and bestsellers. You begin to wonder, is there something inherently wrong with this dream we've all been sold? You feel a tension that words rarely reach, a kind of spiritual friction. You've climbed the mountain. The view is beautiful, but something in your chest remains unmoved, unfulfilled. What is this ache? Where does it come from? And why, after all this effort, do you feel more like a prisoner than a victor? You think back to the younger version of yourself, the one who believed success would be the cure. That praise would erase the doubt. That power would quiet the noise. You did what they told you. You ran the race. You crossed the finish line. So why does it feel like you've arrived at a place that doesn't exist? This is where the deeper question begins to burn. What if success, as defined by society, is not the answer, but the illusion? What if the very structure of what we call achievement is flawed? What if the ladder we've been climbing isn't resting against the wrong wall, but leading nowhere at all? This isn't just about money or fame or ambition. It's about something deeper, older, quieter. It's about meaning. It's about identity. It's about waking up in a life that looks perfect on paper, but feels hollow in the marrow. And it leaves you with the kind of questions that don't fade after a good night's sleep. Why do the most successful people, those we envy, often confess to feeling empty? Why does more never feel like enough? Why are we all so quietly miserable in lives that appear so loudly admirable? You are not alone in this ache. Not mad. Not ungrateful. You are standing at the edge of a truth most will spend their whole lives avoiding. But if you dare to lean in, if you're willing to follow the discomfort, it might lead you somewhere unexpected, somewhere real. Because beyond the glossy surface, beneath the curated confidence, there is a hidden cost no one speaks of. And if you listen closely, you can hear it, calling you deeper, urging you to ask the question most people run from. What if success is the most beautiful cage ever built? The door is open, but first, you have to see the bars. You may wonder why this paradox exists, why those who have reached the summit of success often find themselves quietly aching at the top. The answer doesn't lie in shallow explanations. It goes deeper, into the architecture of your mind, into the whispers of your soul, and into the stories society has told you since you were old enough to dream. To understand this, we must look inward and backward. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist, spoke often of the shadow, the part of ourselves we deny, repress, or ignore. Success in all its glory often forces the shadow deeper underground. You curate an image, polish a persona, and project strength. Meanwhile, your fears, insecurities, and unmet emotional needs fester in the dark. Jung believed true fulfillment comes not from external achievement, but from integration, bringing the shadow into the light. Without that inner reckoning, success simply amplifies your fragmentation. You become a masterpiece on the outside and a mystery to yourself within. Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher of will and becoming, warned of a life without a why. He who has a why to live, he wrote, can bear almost any how. Yet in modern life, our why is often borrowed from culture, from competition, from parental expectation. We're told what to want before we know who we are. We chase goals that never came from our own soul and wonder why reaching them feels so empty. Nietzsche saw this as a road to nihilism, a state of spiritual hollowness. And he was right. Arthur Schopenhauer, the brooding pessimist, believed that human life is defined by endless striving. You want something, you get it, you feel good for a moment. Then the hunger returns, the desire shifts, the cycle begins again. To Schopenhauer, this was the very structure of human existence, eternal craving. It's not the achievement that defines you. It's the constant, restless wanting. Sound familiar? It should, because this is what modern society cultivates. Aldous Huxley, in his haunting novel Brave New World, imagined a future where people are numbed by pleasure and pacified by distraction. Today, that future feels uncomfortably present. We are conditioned not to seek meaning, but to seek stimulation, followers, likes, upgrades, status. But none of that feeds the soul. Jean-Paul Sartre spoke of something he called bad faith, a life lived in self-deception, pretending we have no choice, no agency. We wear masks, follow scripts, perform roles, not because we are forced to, but because we are afraid to face freedom. To Sartre, freedom was terrifying. It meant responsibility. It meant looking at your life and saying, I chose this. I allowed this. I must change this. Most don't want that kind of responsibility, so they settle, they conform, they succeed in the eyes of the world, and they suffer in silence. Then comes Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor and author of Man's Search for Meaning. He saw the worst of humanity and yet emerged with a singular truth. Humans are not wired for pleasure alone. We are wired for purpose. Those who survived, he said, weren't the strongest, but those who had something to live for, a reason, a sense of meaning. This truth pierces like an arrow through the heart of modern ambition. You can have everything and feel nothing if your life lacks meaning. And herein lies the hidden problem. From childhood, we are trained to equate worth with performance. Gold stars become grades. Grades become degrees. Degrees become salaries. Salaries become status. It never stops. The deeper you go, the more your identity fuses with external validation. You are no longer someone who writes. You are only a best-selling author. You are no longer someone who creates. You are only an influencer. Your value becomes a number, a metric, a resume. But the soul is not measurable. This leads to a quiet disintegration, a hollowing, a kind of spiritual amnesia. You forget who you are without the applause, without the title, without the next goal. Psychologists call it hedonic adaptation. Every time you achieve, your brain releases dopamine. You feel good for a moment. Then your baseline resets. The joy fades. You need another hit. So you chase harder, run faster, climb higher. But every summit reveals another mountain, and you are so busy climbing, you never stop to ask if you're even on the right path. This is why success often brings anxiety, not peace. Why high performers are plagued by imposter syndrome. Why the brightest smile in the boardroom often conceals the deepest ache. Because somewhere along the way, success stopped being a path and became a trap built from applause, a trap disguised as prestige, a trap paved with metrics, milestones, and the haunting echo of unmet meaning. But the fact that it's hidden doesn't make it less real. In fact, it's everywhere, and seeing it, truly seeing it, is the first step toward freedom. The rebellion begins soon. But first, you must understand the prison. Once you begin to grasp the roots of hidden misery, once you've seen how psychology, philosophy, and societal programming shape the internal void, you must confront the next unsettling reality. This misery doesn't just live in the mind. It spreads, quietly, relentlessly. It weaves itself into daily choices, relationships, and even the way you feel when you wake up in the morning. It becomes the silent architect of your life. Let's begin with the personal. The pursuit of traditional success encourages the suppression of vulnerability. You are taught to smile even when your soul aches, to project composure even when your inner world trembles. Over time, this becomes second nature, a polished mask you forget you're wearing. But emotional suppression is never harmless. It calcifies into numbness. You stop feeling things fully. Joy, sorrow, awe. Everything gets muted. The highs lose their magic, and the lows become unbearable. You begin to live in a half-light, disconnected not only from others, but from yourself. Meanwhile, your body keeps score. The stress of constant striving releases cortisol into your system every day, all day. Your nervous system lives in fight or flight mode. Over time, this erodes your health, mentally, physically, spiritually. And yet, you keep going, because society rewards this burnout with praise. Look how hard they work. Look how driven they are. But beneath the admiration lies quiet decay. Cognitive biases play their part. You cling to beliefs that reinforce the path you're already on. Confirmation bias convinces you that more achievement will eventually lead to fulfillment. The sunk cost fallacy whispers, "You've come this far. You can't change direction now." So you continue forward, even when your soul is screaming for a different way. Then there's culture, loud, persuasive, and everywhere. From childhood, you're taught to equate self-worth with performance. Good grades, gold stars, social approval, likes, and followers. So you learn to chase applause instead of alignment. And when the applause comes, it never feels like enough. You smile for the camera, but you don't know who you are when it's off. The results? Emotional isolation, superficial connections, competition instead of camaraderie. Friends become ladders, colleagues become threats. Even family relationships can buckle under the pressure of performance, and society pays the price. We create cultures that value output over presence. We raise children who feel pressure to excel before they learn how to rest. We elevate influencers who appear perfect, while hiding the wreckage behind the scenes. Mental health crises become the norm, but we treat them as personal failings, not as symptoms of a deeper, collective wound. Social media pours gasoline on this fire. We scroll through curated perfection, comparing our inner chaos to someone else's filtered highlight reel, and every scroll deepens the ache. Why don't I feel as happy as they look? Why do I have all this and still feel empty? Even as awareness grows, the root remains untouched because we are afraid to name it, afraid to admit that our definitions of success might be the problem, afraid to see that this silent suffering is not an exception, but the rule. But now, you've seen it. You've felt its presence. And that awareness is the beginning of freedom. When you recognize that the world's version of success has never made you whole, you begin to ask a new question. What would make me feel truly alive? This is where transformation begins. This is where escape becomes possible. But to escape, you must confront the prison and understand that it was never built of walls, but of expectations, of illusions, of stories you were told before you were old enough to question them. Now, it's time to write your own. Realizing the silent consequences and hidden miseries of conventional success sparks a revolutionary question. Can you rebel against the invisible chains? Can you break free from the deeply embedded psychological and societal constraints and reclaim authentic joy? Yes. But the rebellion begins within. It requires courage and audacity to question everything you've ever been taught. It demands that you turn inward, peel away the layers of expectation, and stare directly into the face of what is real. Breaking free means radically redefining success, shifting the focus from external validation to internal truth, from appearance to essence, from noise to stillness. The first act of rebellion is radical self-awareness. Ask yourself, not what should I want, but what do I truly want? Not what will make others admire me, but what brings me alive. Jean-Paul Sartre once spoke of authentic living as the only true freedom. To live authentically is to walk in alignment with your deepest convictions, not the borrowed dreams of a society built on image and illusion. That alignment is rare, but it is powerful. It is where life begins to breathe again. Next, embrace vulnerability, not as a flaw, but as a gateway. Modern culture has trained you to armor up, to hide the soft, tender places inside you. But it is precisely in those places where real connection and healing begin. Brené Brown has shown that vulnerability is not weakness. It is the birthplace of joy, creativity, love, and belonging. Dare to say, I don't have it all figured out. Dare to ask for help. Dare to feel fully. Look to the rebels who walked before you. Albert Einstein, despite global fame, lived simply. He was driven not by applause, but by curiosity. He chose wonder over status. He chose depth over image. Or consider Henry David Thoreau, who turned his back on the machinery of society and retreated to Walden Pond. There, he discovered that freedom comes not from having more, but from needing less. In solitude, he unearthed truths that cities could never offer. Rebellion can also look like minimalism, not just clearing your shelves, but clearing your soul. Asking, what am I carrying that no longer serves me? What have I accumulated? Possessions, titles, roles that keeps me from living lightly, freely, truly. Minimalism is not about deprivation. It is about making space for clarity, for creativity, for life. Another powerful rebellion? Reclaiming your time. We live in a world addicted to urgency. Busyness is worn like a badge of honor, but you are not a machine. You are not built to grind endlessly. You are built to breathe, to reflect, to rest. Choosing rest in a culture of exhaustion is an act of defiance. Likewise, rebel by cultivating real relationships. Strip away the networking, the posturing, the subtle performance. Connect instead through honesty, through listening, through presence. Choose people who see the real you and let them. And then redefine failure. Society teaches you to fear it. But failure is not the enemy. It is the teacher, the refiner. Every failure carries a message, not about your worth, but about your growth. Psychologist Carol Dweck speaks of the growth mindset, the belief that abilities can be developed, not fixed. When you see failure as part of the process, it loses its sting. It becomes a stepping stone, a whisper that says, "You're evolving. Keep going." Finally, the deepest rebellion of all redefines success, not as something loud or visible or enviable, but as something meaningful. Viktor Frankl taught us that man's search is not for happiness, but for meaning. That happiness follows as a byproduct of a life lived with purpose. So ask yourself, what matters to you when no one is watching? What would you still choose to do, even if it brought no applause? What makes your soul feel less alone? These are your true north. Let them guide you. Rebellion is not easy. It is a shedding, a stripping down. But it is also a rebirth. It gives you back your power, the power to define your own life, your own worth, your own joy. It lets you stop performing and start living. At the heart of this journey, through hidden misery, psychological roots, unseen consequences, and revolutionary rebellion, lies the ultimate truth. An insight so profound, so transformative, it reshapes your entire understanding of reality and of success itself. This final realization is simple, yet powerful. True success is not a destination. It is not an endpoint you finally reach, nor a summit you climb toward with exhausted breath. True success is a living process, deeply personal, continually unfolding, and rooted within. It is not something you achieve. It is something you become. This truth strikes with the force of revelation. It dismantles the illusion that happiness is a trophy waiting at the end of the race. It dissolves the myth that fulfillment lies just beyond the next achievement. In its place, a quieter, deeper understanding takes root. Satisfaction does not come from arriving, but from aligning. It arises not from impressing the world, but from living in harmony with your own essence. Success, then, is not measured by wealth, accolades, or influence. It is measured by the integrity between who you are and how you live. It emerges from the way you speak your truth, honor your values, and walk through the world with presence and intention. It is quiet, it is still, and it is unmistakably real. To see this truth is to understand, finally, why conventional success feels so hollow. Because no amount of external approval can fill an inner void. No title or trophy can answer a question your soul is still asking. When you live by society's definition of success, you may win the game, but you lose yourself in the process. Alan Watts once said, "Life is not a journey, it's more like a dance." That metaphor matters. Life is not a straight line toward some elusive goal. It is a rhythm, a motion, a flow. The music is always playing, not when you reach a milestone, but here, now, in this very breath. The moment you stop chasing and start dancing, you feel it. You understand. This truth liberates. It strips away fear of failure, of judgment, of not being enough. It frees you from the need to perform. When you stop living for the scoreboard, you start living from the soul. You speak differently. You walk differently. You love and create and rest differently. You come home to yourself. And in this returning, something beautiful happens. Your relationships change. They deepen because you are no longer trying to impress or compete. You are simply being. Others sense it. They feel safer around you, more seen, more open. What once were transactions become real, human connections. Your work changes too. You begin choosing not what looks impressive on a resume, but what sets your spirit alight. You stop asking, "What will they think of this?" and start asking, "Does this matter to me?" You make decisions not to maintain an image, but to cultivate meaning. That shift, small as it may seem, is the axis around which a life can turn. You begin to live boldly, not recklessly, but with courage, not with arrogance, but with conviction. You are no longer afraid of making mistakes because you understand now. Growth lives on the other side of missteps, and perfection was never the point. Presence was. This truth is not abstract. It is immediate. It touches every part of your life. It changes the way you wake up in the morning and the way you fall asleep at night. It changes the way you speak to a stranger or to someone you love. It even changes the silence between words. When this realization finally lands, truly lands, it is like a breath you didn't know you were holding. You look back on the years of striving, the endless proving, and you see it for what it was. A long detour that taught you what actually matters. All your past striving, your quiet discontent, your sleepless nights, they weren't meaningless. They were necessary. They brought you here, to this truth, to this new beginning. And now you are faced with a choice. You can go back to the noise, the image, the race. Or you can walk forward toward something slower, truer, more alive. You can choose a life where you are no longer owned by expectations, but guided by your own clarity. Choose that life. Choose meaning over metrics. Choose joy that does not depend on outcomes. Choose a success that whispers instead of shouts. Choose a path that honors who you are, not just what you've done. In doing so, you begin to write a new definition of success, one not defined by society, but authored by your soul. A definition no one can take from you because it is lived, not earned. And in this new way of living, you find something far greater than what you were chasing. Peace, depth, connection, truth. You begin to understand that the greatest success is not being admired by the world, but being at home, within yourself. That is the ultimate truth, and it changes everything.